Hello. Welcome to the Route Podcast, where we discuss finding a path to a more fulfilling life. The maiden recording. So excited to share this with you and get things underway. I am your host, Cody Howard, and today we have Bill Cordes, motivational speaker. Bill Cordes, and close mentor of mine. I couldn't think of a better person to start the podcast off with. Bill has spent the last 30 years teaching teens, college students, teachers, and business leaders better ways to live their days. His programs have reached over 3 million people in all the states and Canada. He's an author, former teacher, coach, and television talk show host. He also coined the phrase YOGOWYPI. You only get out what you put in, something you may or may not have heard of. We discuss the origin stories of that, how building a community is so important for not only your mental health, but also business success, focusing on growth as opposed to results, and daily tactics and tools such as journaling or mind mapping. I'm so excited to share this conversation with you and to see what you get out of it. But without further ado, let me get out of the way and say, please enjoy this wide-ranging conversation with the one and only Bill Cordes. Well, first podcast, when I was thinking about doing this project, there's definitely one person that came to mind in terms of a mentor, and it's you, Bill. So thank you so much for being on the show.
It's my pleasure, Cody. Thanks.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And our paths have crossed for many years now, but actually it goes back to a summer when I was like 17, and you allowing me to hang with you for almost the majority of the summer.
Yeah.
Learned a little bit about speaking and about that. And so I'd love to hear, what was that I guess allowed you to take me in? Was there someone that did that for you when you were younger, or what was that like?
Yeah, I had a family when I was living in Hawaii that the Psyches that took me in, and that meant a lot to me, just to hang with their family and spend time with them and listen to the wisdom of Alvin Psyche. And But our relationship actually went back before that, because we had the connection through Linda Hill and going to Norwich and going to your high school and then KYLS. So I knew you pretty well before you ever entered my home. It was one of the easiest things I ever did, Cody, was invite you to come live with my family, because I wanted my young children to have exposure to what I thought was a great role model, which is you. And so, it was good for everybody.
Well, thanks so much. Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing up Hawaii too, because I think that's one of the things that I really wanted to cover. I know when I look back on my own path that summer, I think shaped a lot in terms of what I really learned from a whole spectrum of things. But part of the show and part of my goal for that is to really, finding a path to a fulfilling life is part of dissecting, people who have gone before us with that, and whether that be a generational gap or just even experiences. I'd love to hear a little bit more about, your time in Hawaii and when you were younger. Did you always know that you wanted to be a speaker, or did you kind of stumble into that? What are some common traits in your early days in terms of Hawaii that led you to the path that you're on now?
I luckily fell into it. It sounds all well and good being in Hawaii, and I had this opportunity to go to Hawaii. And for me, I look at that as a differentiating experience for me. I didn't know it at the time, but while I was in Hawaii, I was asked, I said, I've made a declaration that I wanted to work with teenagers, and luckily somebody overheard that declaration and said, hey, you ought to check out this program called Winter's Camp. And that was the beginning of my speaking process. I remember going to this camp and sitting in the back of the room and watching what was happening in the room and seeing a different way to be with people, and being a part of Winter's Camp, and then was asked to come back and be a team leader, and then asked to come back and be a facilitator. It really molded my way into that. After I did a few camps, I decided, well, I want to be a teacher. And then I started teaching and doing programs on the side, and that all led into the speaking. And yeah, I would say that I luckily fell into it, and that's the short answer to your question. Yeah.
Did you have a reason for students, or why students?
I think, I remember being in high school and having some really cool teachers, and I remember thinking, watching them live their life. I mean, being having enough acuity at that time of my life to watch the teachers and going, they have a pretty good life. And I didn't think I was going to go into education, but then when this summer camp thing came upon me, it all just kind of moved in that direction. And why students? I guess you know, it was a cool time of my life, and I just want people to enjoy that time of their life as well. The teen years through your 20s, I think, is an amazing time of personal transformation where we figure out who we are and we come into ourselves. And I like being with people when they're going through that process, the ups, the downs, the highs, the lows, the struggles, all of that it's an exciting time of life.
Yeah, that's so true. And looking back on that, there's just so much energy in terms of what's going on and everything like that. I think what's interesting to me though is you've spoken to so many people over these past 30 years
Yeah.
in so many different walks of life. Is there a common thread in terms of questions that people bring to you, or yeah, or like just fears or things like that that come in
Yeah, I mean, I think,
that you
people
with?
people are curious about, what you asked about, how'd you get started, and why do you do what you do? But I think the common thread is that everybody wants to make their life a little bit better. We're all, and for lack of a better term, we're all searching for creating some kind of happiness in our lives. And people are in the question of, how do I do that? And I love being in that question of what that means and how do we get to that place. And so I would say that's probably the most recurring thing that I hear.
Mm. Yeah, you definitely hear the terms like follow your passion and do what makes you happy a lot today.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what's happiness to Bill? And has that evolved over the years?
It's funny. I used to not talk about it because I saw it as something kind of like that people didn't want to go into it. And now, there's this whole movement with um, all of the studies on happiness, and people talking about happiness more and more. But for me, it's I use well, I'll say it to you this way. I was doing a program at Latham Northwest High School, and it's a school unity project. And one of the things that I state in that program is that happiness and sadness are not opposites, right? And then we always think, well,
Hmm.
what's the opposite of happiness? Well, it's sadness, but in reality, it's not. And when I said it during the break, right after, a girl came up to me, she said, "I disagree with what you're saying." I said, "What do you mean?" She goes, "I used to be happy and now I'm sad." And I said, "Well, what made you sad?" And she said, "Well, I lost my grandpa." And she goes, "I know a lot of people lose their grandparent, but my grandpa was my everything. And when I lost him, I have been in this, depression, this sadness, and I can't get out of it." And I said, "Hey, we're going to be going through some cool stuff today. Can you just, stay with the process, be engaged, and afterwards we can talk about it?" And yeah, absolutely. And so at the end of the day, we were doing some sharing, and this girl raised her hand and she said, "Today I realized that I am so happy that I'm sad." And I was like, "Well, what do you mean by that?" And she said, "Well, I've been bummed out ever since I lost my grandpa, and today I realized the reason why I'm sad is because my grandpa was awesome. And if he wasn't such an awesome part of my life, right now I would feel nothing." And it was a great share, but that led me down this whole other path about what does it mean to be happy. And I started thinking about that it's our job as humans to experience the full palette of emotions, love and laughter and confusion and joy and pride and conflict and anger and surprise, disapproval, admiration, peacefulness, sadness. All of those are the palette that we paint our lives with. And if we only painted our life with a couple of emotions, it, it wouldn't be the same. But it's the full palette of emotions that make a great life. And so happiness, HAPPY, is having a personal presence with you. That whatever you're going through, learn to be present in that, in this moment, whatever it is, and fully experience that, because that's living, that's life, that's what we're here for. So that kind of redefined happiness for me.
Yeah, presence. I think
Yeah, that's such an interesting thing because as you do look at this whole ecosystem of happiness, right, or all the emotions, I think that is one thing that does stand out is you have to be present and willing to experience those different things.
Yeah, to
Has
have it happen, have an experience, frustration happen, and go, I'm frustrated right now, and this is what it feels like, and this is what it's doing to my body, and so what is it telling
Mhm.
me? And just being present in that, because we're present in that, then we'll be present in other emotions as well.
Yeah, and I think that leads back to I think where we're at as a society as a whole today. It's interesting to see those same studies that are having to do with happiness. They all talk about engagement and
Hmm.
having real face to face relationships, which seems to be so interesting in a time that we're more connected than ever. We're also losing the most disconnection, and it seems like loneliness and feelings of depression are continuing to be on the rise.
Yes.
It's interesting to me how that happens, and you getting to work with so many people in this stage of life of where they're really going through major changes or making decisions on who they're going to be. Is that something that you experience quite a bit firsthand? I know you shared this story, but
Right. No, yes. I see it more and more. We're more anxious than ever before, which is more of a call to action, Cody, for people doing what you're doing and reaching out to other people who have gone before you, so we can learn from each other of what this is what you're going through and this is what I'm going through, and really, really connecting. I mean, developing meaningful relationships is the single most important thing that we can do at any time in our lives, not just during our teen years or during our 20s or during our 30s, but at any times in our life. One of the things that I like to talk about with high school students is the senior spiral. And the senior spiral is a series of peak emotions that we go through in our senior year, where we look forward to the first day of our senior year where we get to be a senior. We look forward to the first football game, first basketball game, last basketball game. We look forward to prom, and we have all these things that lead up to graduation, looking forward to graduation. But on the backside of every one of those peak experiences, we have these voids in our life. Oh wow, that's done. You can think back, Cody, what it was like when you took off your pads for the last time and you had that void of like, man, I'm never going to play football like this again. And so we feel that void. And I always tell students that when we feel the voids of our lives, it's important to fill those voids with meaningful relationships, not social media, not staring at our phone, not going and putting ourselves in a room and shutting down and watching Netflix all day, but learning to feel those voids and then fill them with meaningful relationships, so that when we get to college or we get to the next step of our life and we feel lonely and we feel sad or we feel depressed, or you're sitting in that dorm room for the first time and you're looking around and you're like, man, I'm not, all my friends are doing something else and I wish I was with them. But we learn to feel that void and then go, hey, I need to get outside of my dorm room. I need to get outside of my life, and I need to connect with other humans. Fill those voids with meaningful relationships.
yeah, I think that's so true. And you look at any successful person in today's world, it's we like to romanticize. It's actually just talking about this morning. We romanticize this self-made image, or the people that had the resilience and did it all themselves. But it really takes a village to build that up.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
so for these high school students or college students or even just young ambitious adults looking to fill that void in their life with meaningful relationships, do you have any tactics or any successful things and situations that you've had of how to go about finding a mentor or making those meaningful connections with either someone older than you or even peers that may be at your school or university?
Well, interesting. It's very timely that right now I just went down the rabbit hole of Mr. Rogers, and because of the movie. And the thing that just struck me as so cool in the interviews was that he valued children. He wasn't he valued who they are. And I think it's an important message for all of us, is that we value people. If you want to be a good mentor, you You got to value people. If you want to be a good mentee, you got to value people. And the way that we value people is by listening to them. My good friend Phil Boyd says it's hard to hate someone whose story that you know. And so I think the best advice is to value relationships. Stop talking about generations, right? And I mean, and I do it too, but I think the talk of generations, which is the boomers are this way and the Xers were this way and the millennials are this way, all of that's well and good if we're using it to understand the other generation. But I think what's happened is we've used it as a way to divide us. And so I think that it goes back to, if we listen to people, they will feel valued by us.
Yeah, it kind of takes me back to YOGOWYPI and your trademark. I know it's kind of a funny full circle and a little meta, but as you look at it, as you look at these relationships, you really do. You only get out what you put in,
Yep.
and I'd love to hear your version of this and explain that. I'd love to hear about your relationship with Jim Castigan and how you first found YOGOWYPI and really how that's developed into not only these relationships that we talk about, but through your path throughout the years.
Yeah, he's a communication professor that I had when I was getting my master's degree at Fort Hays State. I'd actually had him as an undergrad, went away to the University of Hawaii, came back, applied to the master's school to get my graduate degree, and was a part of the master's program and actually taught under him. And in the last year of his life, and he had this little thing that he talked about, YOGOWYPI, you only get out what you put in, and he demonstrated that in the last year of his life. I mean, he was going through chemotherapy, and he would show up and he would teach his class. And some days he'd be so weak, but he would come in and he would give us all. And even though he didn't have the quote physical energy, he had the mental presence, and he gave us everything he had during the last year of his life. And he was a true demonstration of YOGOWYPI. And as a result, I have spoken with his family and gotten permission to use YOGOWYPI. And so I've had the opportunity to share it all across the country. But it was really one person who mentored me in a special way, helped me get some start with some speaking engagements, and put me on that path. But again, one person, right? Just like you talk about, I've heard you talk about the professors that you had when you were at K-State. That it's amazing how one small little thing that they say or they do, short conversations, can impact an entire life.
Yeah, it's true. It's an interesting thing as you look back to that, and that's something that I didn't know prior, right? I always knew about YOGOWYPI and that call, but I was not aware of that it's an ode to Jim.
Yes.
It's something that you carried the baton afterward, and I think that's pretty cool. Do you mind going a little further into your relationship with him? Was he a type of mentor that was the type of person asking questions like, what's holding you back, and what fear is stopping you from this? Or was he always that quiet encourager on the sidelines?
I would say he was an encourager, and he was a really good listener. He made you feel like you were the most important person in the room. I mean, going back to my undergrad work, I took his class, interpersonal communication, and I told him, Dr. Costing, I really like what we're doing here. I think I'd like to study this. And he said, well, we'd love to have you in the communication department. So he listened to me, and then he invited me, right? And so boom, I changed my major to communication, and then went forward and got my bachelor's and my master's in communication. But it was listening, and then a subtle encouragement, just a subtle shove, and got me to thinking, yeah, I could do this for a living. I could do this as a part of my career.
That's cool. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I know when you think of that and Jim, it makes me think of the question of, when you think of the phrase really living with passion, it sounds like Jim is a great example of that. Do you have any current examples of first person that comes to mind?
I first person that would come to mind for me would be my mentor when I was in Hawaii. There again, see another mentor. I went to check out this winter's camp program, and Delores Gregoire who is a product of 13 foster home, has lived her life and her entire life dedicated to teenagers. She encouraged me to work with teenagers. We'd love to have you as a role model. You'd be a great role model for teenagers at our camp. That subtle, just one statement at the right time, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm in. And she continues to be an inspiration, continues to run camps, and I get to go back occasionally and go through camps. All of my kids have gone through winter's camp, and they've seen her, and she's mentored them as well. So yes, she's a pretty fine example, one of the best humans that I know. And I'm so thankful and so grateful that she has been a part of my life.
That's really cool. I'll have to keep note of that. I'll put something in the show notes on a way to find some of her content. Be good to share with people.
winterscamp.com. Yeah.
winterscamp.com. Okay, I'll make sure we do that. Yeah, that would definitely be good to look up for both me and anyone else. And knowing that you've been through, oh my gosh, probably an endless number of different camps and experiences throughout the years, traveling constantly. What do you do to find rest or step away in order to keep you energized and keep coming back with good engaging conversations and speaking engagements on a day-to-day basis?
It's not as hard as you think, Cody. It's, first of all, the work is so much fun. The hardest part about what I do is the travel, and I think any speaker would tell you that. Because when you're working, that's fun, because you're being with the audience, and you're thinking, okay, this is going to work here, this is going to work here, and you're kind of rearranging things and deciding things in your mind as you're going. It's trying to serve your audience in the best way possible. So the teaching part is empowering, and when you get done with it, it's always like, yeah, that was fun, or oh, I met some cool people, or that was a great connection, or I enjoyed the process, or I felt like I made a difference or made an impact. So it's always fun, looking forward to work. Every time I get to go to work, it does feel like it's a get to. It's not a lot of effort. I mean, as far as the work part of it, it's the tough part of it is the travel. And I can't wait until I can't wait till I get to speak again. So that's always the
Yeah,
way it is.
you are one of the most energetic speakers and just humans in general that I think anyone could run into. For anybody who has not seen you and happens to listen to this podcast, I definitely hope they look up some of your speaking engagements on YouTube, because you're just so engaging. No matter if it's high school and where I spent a lot of my time with you, to even, I'm sure, corporate events and things like that. What are some of the things that get you pumped up and ready to go prior? Do you have any rituals or things that you do, right before a speaking engagement that gets you in the right mindset?
I think the quiet time, it's the quiet time before I go, where I really just get to sort things out. I spend time with my audience ahead of time, and it's not like it's a ritual. It's just something that I've always done. On my way to my first assembly at Greensburg High School in Greensburg, Kansas, I was in my mind going, okay, what do these students need to hear from me, and what message do I want to share, and what is the best thing that I can share with them. I really like the quiet time. When I'm in the vehicle on the way, I'll find myself just being quiet for 2 hours, and just being in nothing but my thoughts. So I would say that's the thing that I do to prepare, and then it's just getting there. And I love it when they first start walking in, and connect with a person here, and hopefully that becomes something that I can bring into my program. And yeah, it's the quiet time, and then when they first walk in, seeing their faces and hoping that I can get them from point A to point B.
What's that like when they're all kind of filing in? You're first doing your introduction.
Scary, always scary. Yeah, always scary, always scary, and it never goes away. When I see a whole bunch of students filing in, I'm nervous, and of course, I always do name that tune in the very beginning, regardless of the age of the audience, whether it's a corporate audience or it's a high school audience. And so when I start playing name that tune and getting some music going and getting some people involved and raising their hands, So that's always the time where I settle myself, right? But yeah, it's scary. It still is, and there are times when I think, right? I was in California speaking at a high school in August, and I was in a gym that was hot. There was no air conditioning, and 500 students were filing in. I had 4 sessions back to back to back to back, and I remember thinking, am I doing the right thing? Am I in the right profession? But they get in and you do your thing, and you get them to where they need to go, and it's always fun. And I think that with adult audiences too. I think I have that those moments of self-doubt right ahead of time. Is this what they need to hear? Am I giving them the right stuff? And but usually once I get going and they start laughing a little bit, that's one of the things that I was to talk about, essentials of engagement. When we turn something into not me talking to you, but us doing something together, then it becomes a process that we're all learning in, versus, because I never wanted to be the guy that these are the 5 ways to do this, this, and this. I wanted to be, hey, how can we discover this together? And so I think that's the thing that settles me and the thing that relaxes
Yeah. So, can you, for anyone that doesn't know, name that tune? Can you describe
me.
in detail and what that is, and then also and how that sets everything else up for success? So you say every time that you start with that, and it kind of brings you to a level of mind. But I'm interested to hear what that also does for the audience and allows you to move forward into some of the deeper conversations that you have.
Right. It's just a fun little thing that I started doing. The first time I started doing it, I was doing it off of cassettes, right? and but I noticed that I'll play a song, and then, hey, I always start, the music's on when they're coming in. I say, hey, it's a pretty simple game. If you know the answer with the students, all you got to do is stand up. You must stand up, make yourself known. If you get the answer correct, you actually win a cheesy prize. And so I pass out stickers. If it's adults, I say, raise your hand real high and I'll give you a sticker. And so what that does is it just creates this energy in the room, and there's just this kind of craziness that's happening, and while that's happening, I feel like, okay, I can relax because we just had fun together. When you have fun with somebody, right, everything is different. And so then I get introduced, and then the message starts, right? So that's kind of the whole process of Name That Tune.
That's so funny. It's almost like yeah, having that shared experience that allows you to set up for something
Yeah.
else. It's almost what's that saying? People won't always remember what you say, but they remember how you make them feel.
Yeah. The Maya Angelou, that's a part of my assembly. The Maya Angelou quote is people will forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they'll never forget the way you made them feel, which is central to everything that I do, whether it's high school, college students, adults. Is that how you make people feel? Which is a great thing for us to remember when we're mentoring somebody. Is how do people feel when they're in your presence, or when you are being, or when someone is guiding you? What do you do to make them feel valuable? Because if the mentor knows that the mentee values them, now we're in a great place to have a relationship. And I've had experiences where people said, hey, I want to come and talk to you, and I want to pick your brain. And they asked, they did a lot of talking, but not a lot of listening. I don't have a problem with that, but if you really want to connect with somebody, you got to really listen to them. So I was getting to listen, but they didn't get to listen very much.
What if when that type of thing happens, right? I'm sure you get asked to coffee or pick the brain, which is the common thing,
Yeah.
quite a bit. Do you have any rules of engagement in terms of when you say no, or when you feel like it's a right fit, or alternatively, thinking back to maybe when you were in that time, did you have any ways to get through or break through the noise, knowing that there are probably also a lot of people trying to get coffee or pick other people's brain?
Yeah, I never say no. I never say no. If someone wants some time, you know, I'll, one of the things that I'll, if it's through email and someone sends me an email and they say, hey, I'd like to pick your brain, I'll respond with, what do you think we would like to, what would you like to cover in this session? so that I want to see them putting in some work on their side and give me some ideas. And if they respond with, I'd like to cover this and this and this, sometimes they don't respond, right? Sometimes, hey, what would you like to cover in this session? And if they don't respond, well, then I know that it wasn't important enough to them. And that's a little thing I picked up on a YouTube video or something somewhere along the way that a long time ago that I started doing. Anytime somebody says, hey, I want to get some ideas from you, or I want to pick your brain, I'll just respond, hey, what do you think we would cover in this message? And if they respond, then great, then we'll cover it. And if they don't respond, then I know that they didn't really care much enough to get involved with that.
Do you have, when it comes to people getting coffee, or knowing that you are pretty well known within the speaking community, do you have any favorites or commonly given bad advice that you hear given to young, ambitious high school and college students?
I mean, the stuff that I don't like is the generic stuff. Follow your passion. Well, what does that mean? Know who you are. Well, what does that mean? And there is wisdom to that. There's wisdom in that. But I would say, what is better for people to hear is, what's something that you want to do, and what are 3 things that you're going to do to get there, right? So a comment is, hey, I want to be a speaker. I'm like, okay, so you want to be a speaker. So what are 3 things that you want to do to help you get there so that you can be a speaker? And allowing them to listen to themselves, which is, again, one of the essentials of engagement is, how do we become wise, right? And we become wise through self-process, through journeying within ourselves, through getting out a journal, pencil to the paper, and writing a letter to yourself, talking, spending time with pencil and paper, pen and paper, writing about the things that you love to do, so that you can figure out what are the reoccurring themes. And people say, well, can't I do it on my computer? Well, yeah, you can, but which is more valuable, a text message from somebody, an email from somebody, or somebody wrote you a handwritten letter? Which of the 3? Obvious, a handwritten letter, way more valuable. Why? Because it took time, it took energy. It's your hand, it's your art, it's a part of you on the page. So the way that we find our passion, I think, is by journaling, is by getting the pencil to the paper, writing about our lives, and following up with things about what we learned from experiences.
Yeah, journaling is something that I have always struggled with. I've never been very good at it. Is that a practice that you've done for a long time?
I'm sitting in my office and I got a whole shelf full of journals from my life. Yeah. I've done it, and it's fun and it's interesting to go through. And I think it's going to be interesting for my kids when I pass on. They're like, wow, Dad wrote about a lot of stuff.
Do you remember when that started, or why that started?
Yeah, I remember. In fact, I'll just pull one off the shelf right now. This is from Vision Journal 10/12/1990. I've got another one, Vision Journal 1980, Vision Journal number 2, which started in 1989, and I think this one's going to be number 1, and started in February of 1984. Right. So that's the first time I ever journaled. And so, yeah, I've got pages and pages and pages and sometimes I was really consistent about it, and sometimes I wasn't. I think, being a first generation college student, I felt like that, it was kind of a big deal that I was at college. And so I wanted to write down the experiences. I think that's where it started.
Do you have any structure in terms of journaling? Is it something that you do in the morning with coffee, similar to your morning routine, or do you just kind of free flow write? Do you have, I think, let's say me, right? I'm wanting to get into journaling. What would be your tips of how you structured it, and how someone who has not journaled or ever been very consistent at it could start?
Yeah, I'm consistently inconsistent. So or inconsistently consistent, however you want to put that. I do it when it feels right. There are times when, like I remember when I was in California, and I was like, I need to journal about this moment. And I sat at the beach and I journal. I always keep my journal with me in my backpack. So there are, and I won't say always, most of the time I do a pre-program journal, and then I like to follow that up with what I call a WID, W-I-D, what I did in the program. So I'll write about, what this audience was like, how it felt to work with them, what I was thinking about before I started. And then I'll always cover what I did. So then it's a really nice thing when I go back. So this year I'm doing Indiana Student Council. So I'll go back to the last time I spoke at Indiana Student Council and go, oh, okay, oh yeah, this is what I covered. And so maybe I want to do something a little bit different with them than what I did with them the last time. So it serves that dual purpose for me of covering what I did in front of audiences. And sometimes if I'm struggling with something, or if I'm going through a tough time, or if my kids are struggling, I'll put it on paper just to see what answers come forth the next time I sit down.
Do you have any other routines or things like journaling that have really served as a great tool, both personally and professionally?
Yeah,
throughout the years?
Sure. Mind mapping is a big deal for me. I learned in 1988 when I first became a staff member at Winners Camp the value of a mind map. And for those people who don't know, you should look it up. And there's all kinds of stuff out on YouTube about mind mapping. I don't multicolor mind map. I like the way the pencil feels. And so, like on my wall right now, I have maps of everything that I'm working on. What a mind map is you put the central idea of what you're thinking about in the very, very center. The main idea is in the center. We were taught when we wrote, put the main idea up on top, but you put the main idea in the center. And it's just branches off of it, just questions, ideas. You ever notice like somebody says, okay, Cody, you're going to write a term paper on, the War of 1812. And so you're going to have some initial thoughts when they say War of 1812. And so a smart person would go War of 1812 and then go, okay, these are my initial thoughts. And if you don't come back to that map until the day before the term paper is due, which by the way is what most people do, then at least you have those initial thoughts on paper, and then you can start from there. So mind mapping is a great tool. I map all my talks before I do them. Yeah.
It's interesting. So journal, mind mapping, are those really the big ones?
Those are the big ones. Yeah. Those are the two most important things that I do. If I have a new story that I'm working on, I'll write it out. I'll map it. Then I will write it out, and then I will record my own voice. And then on the way to the program, I'll listen to that news story several times until that news story becomes a part of me. So that's it. That's probably the other tool that I use.
And then follow that with your quiet time and really getting your mindset right for the speech.
Yeah, and then afterwards, it's beautiful to go, okay, I missed this. Oh, I missed this. Oh, this next time I do it, this is what I'm going to do. So the focus is always on, rather than shaming myself, the focus is always on what can I do the next time I do it. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, shifting gears a little bit, in terms of all of that, you've had a number of different experiences, and I know a lot of it early on. What kind of led you to working with high school? It sounds like was camp and winter camp specifically. Are there 1 to 2 experiences that you suggest everyone have in life, and why?
The differentiating experience in your 20s is huge, right? And I don't know what that means. I think it means different things for everybody. For me, it was going to Hawaii and also teaching on Guam. Those were differentiating experiences that whenever I came back to Kansas, I felt a little bit more confident about myself because I went and did those things. My son, Shannon, who's a junior in college right now, I think he's going to do his internships with College Works, which is a painting, where you paint houses. Have you ever heard of it?
Yep.
Yeah. So he's going to do College Works, and I hope that becomes his differentiating experiences, or one of his differentiating experiences. Of course, he's a college basketball player. That's going to be a differentiating experience for him. So I think when we're in our 20s and in our 30s is that we find those experiences that we can do, whether it's going on the Peace Corps or going to South America or doing service, which I know you did some of that, is that something that separates you from, I went to high school, I went to college, I got a job. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's such an important part. And there's something about getting lost, you know. I was lost. There was times when I was living on Hawaii, living on Guam, where I was lost. I was like, didn't know what was next, didn't know where my next meal was going to come from. I was tired of ramen. I mean, and I didn't have anybody else. I didn't have an airbag to fall on. I had to figure it out myself. And it's just powerful to have that.
Mhm. Yeah, it builds a little bit of a resilience, I would say.
Yes, it does. Yeah,
And,
so
and
powerful.
openness. Do you think, as you think about let's say Guam specifically, as you look about that time, and not only do you have to build some self-reliance and some resilience there, did it, going back to community and those engaging relationships, did it force your hand a little bit to open up
Yeah,
and ask for help for strangers? Or
absolutely. Yes. I would, there was something really cool about, living in a different culture where you talk to people, and then, people would invite you, hey, come to dinner with us, right? Or come hang out with us. And I would say, I don't know if I'm asking your question specifically, but yeah, there was times when I had to ask for help. Yeah, I had to ask for help. I had to ask for a ride. I had to ask for transportation. Had to, because I didn't have that. And so yeah, that was a little bit humbling when you were there. Yeah.
yeah, I can see that. I think that's one of the things that I struggle with, and I know a lot of people in their 20s and things like that, kind of going back to what we talked about earlier, that self-made or self-reliance, they struggle with asking for that help or finding the right way to have that. And I'm wondering if putting yourself in those humbling positions really open you up to uh, better allowing your self capacity to ask for that in the future.
Yes. There's something really cool that happens when we drop our ego of, hey, I've got it together. Hey, I have the answers. Hey, I know where I'm going. But, a lot of times we don't. In fact, most of the time we don't. And so when we can just get ourselves into a position that I'm going to ask for, and I think you said it earlier, is that it's the whole community that puts us that we surround ourselves, that puts us in a place to be successful. Nobody does it on their own. And I like that about living a life, is that we don't do it alone. We do it
Yeah.
connected to other humans.
Did you learn that the hard way when you first started speaking, or was that something that you feel like you always had?
I don't know if I learned it the hard way. I think that whenever I started connecting with other people and other speakers and other principals and other superintendents and other clients, I just found there was just a lot of joy in it. Like meeting your advisor, Linda Hill, at a volleyball clinic for the first time, and getting to know her, and then how that led to all these different things and all these different connections and all these different relationships. Because you think about it, because Ray Bouchard helped me out. I was speaking at a clinic, which led to Linda Hill, which led to, my connection with all the people at Norwich, which led to Kansas Youth Leadership Summit, which led to me doing programs with you as a staff member. I think about the beauty of connections is powerful. And so, yeah, I don't know if I learned it the hard way. I think I got the benefits of it without asking for it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing the doors that one connection can open if you're willing to have it.
Yes. Yes. And it's got it, which is one of the things that I wanted to talk about with you today, was that movement is the key to happiness. And when I say movement, people always say, oh yeah, when you move your body, when you go out and run 5 miles, you feel better. Yeah. Yes, that's true. But when we have a challenge, when we have a problem, we have an issue, the key is to do something. Do something. Even if it's go out and fail and figure out what not to do. That's the key to happiness. People say, well, if I fail, I'll feel bad. No, you won't. you'll look at that and you go, yeah, I worked my tail off and I learned some stuff along the way. And I wish I would have succeeded. Would have been nice, but what did I learn here? And that's the power of going back and journaling and going, why am I better? Because of the experience. One of the, I always work with Oklahoma FFA, and students will always ask, what do I need to do to be successful? And I'll always say, well, run for chapter office. And if you fail, no big deal. You'll learn something about yourself. Run for state office. If you fail, you'll be better because of the experience. Or maybe they'll ask, should I run for state office? Yes. Because the worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to fail. But if you fail, you're going to learn some things about yourself that are going to be very, very powerful in the long run.
Yeah. I mean, have you ever had a decision that you put off making because you're fearful of the outcome?
Yes. I mean, I think that happens all the time, where I think, especially with writing my book, first time I went into the whole process of writing a book, I put it off for 5 years, right? And then when I finally did it, I was like, well, why did I wait so long to do it? All I had to do is just to do it. And, there's always those little things, like, should I put together a different program? Should I make this phone call? I failed to make the phone call. And as a result of, because I didn't make the phone call, I didn't get the business. There's a little pain that is associated with that, but going back to that thing, learning not to shame yourself into success. Okay, what did I learn from that? It's a real quiet humbleness. Go, what did I learn from that? And then make the adjustment.
Yeah, knowing that movement is key, and using this book as an example, what was your specific breaking point to get over the analysis paralysis? I think this is something that it definitely hits home for me. This podcast has been something that bounced around my head for 18 months and just sat there for all that time before, here we are on this first episode. And so I'm curious to know, when you talk about your book as an example, 5 years, that's a long time to be holding on to something. What was that breaking point? Yeah. And then, what led you to saying, oh, why didn't I start this 5 years ago?
Craig Hillier, he said, he got tired of hearing me talk about Craig, who's written several books. He's also a speaker, CraigHillier.com. He said, Bill, I've been hearing you talk about this book for a long time. Yeah. He says, well, so here's the deal. Next year, by this time, July 2003, you will hand me a copy of your book, or you will hand me $500. I will spend that $500, and I will enjoy spending that $500, but you will hand it to me. Deal? And I laughed and I said, yeah, deal. So a year later, I handed him the book, not the $500. And I know as crazy as that sounds, and it wasn't about the $500. And he also said this. He said, Bill, don't write the book because you'll sell a lot of copies. You're going to sell a lot of copies of the book. He said, write the book because it'll make you a better person. And, that's what you're discovering. It's what anybody who takes on something bigger than themselves, when they do it, it's going to make them a better person. You probably remember I had this deal, CTSO University, that it was an online chapter officer training program. Great idea. Put, $30,000 into it and tons and tons of hours. And it never got off the ground. But the whole process made me a better person. I'm better at things now than I was before.
That's such a good outlook to have. And yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, it's so easy to get caught in that fear, or that, like you said, analysis paralysis of in movement and not being able to move. And I think so much goes into that, right? Of getting over the ego just to make the decision, or being willing to fail and make that step and know that you learn. But what's also interesting to me is that it took somebody else, or an outside connection and party for you to also get over that. And so,
yeah, I didn't want to give Craig Hillier $500.
Yeah. So do you feel like, I mean, that's such a interesting point, as I think about this journey, that an experiment that I'm going on, or anyone that could be listening to this, is they've got, and we all have these secret goals, these secret things that we've had in our head that maybe we share with the ones close to us, or with those relationships and close friends that we trust. Is it the relationship that pushes us there, or is it having that set deadline and repercussion that gets us moving?
I think it
That
depends on. I think it
of
depends on
gets
the
you
person.
over the hump of, like gets you over the hump of fear and the analysis paralysis of, all right, well, I'd rather do this and fail than have to pay someone $500
Right.
in a year.
Well, it's Carolyn Dweck talks about it, and having a growth mindset is that it's so important that we focus on what is the growth going to be, not the outcome of failure. And luckily I've been fortunate to have people in my life who have used that kind of language with me, not even way before Carolyn Dweck wrote her book, but is always focusing on the feedback that I'm going to get instead of the failure. And but yeah, you need, sometimes but it goes back to that of, you need a push. It's be the subtle, gentle pushes from the people around us make a big difference. And so anybody who's had a subtle push, then how important is it to give someone else a subtle word of encouragement to help them get to a better place.
Yeah, it's so interesting how it all comes back to that. Those people that you're around. If you had the option to build out a lock screen for the next smartphone release, all iPhones, Androids, everything, what would it say and why?
The first reaction, of course, for anybody who knows me, it's going to be YOGOWYPI, right?
Yeah.
But I want to go back to that thing. People are always going to remember the way you made them feel. That's made the biggest impact on my life, is going into every experience knowing that people are going to remember the way you made them feel. And there have been times where I've left being with people and wondering, and having the pain of wondering, did they feel better because I was there? Maybe occasionally, sometimes, a student acts out and in an assembly, and looking back on it and going, did I really handle that the best way possible? Well, having in the back of my head that people are always going to remember the way you made them feel, has made me a little softer in my approach, and has made me a little bit better. So I think that I would love that.
I think that is a good place as any to end on.
Awesome.
Just remembering how we make people feel. So thank you so much, Bill, for being the first one on this podcast and on this journey of mine. Thank you for being my encourager and having me get out of this, and not even threatening to charge me $500 in a year. So
Hey,
appreciate that.
Cody, I've loved this, and of course, I'm always your biggest fan, and I want you to continue to do great things, and I know you will. So congrats on your success.
Well, thank you so much. For anyone out there that wants to hang out and get more of Bill, you're pretty active on Twitter at Bill Cordes.
Yep.
And then you can also find you at www.billcordes.com. Is there anything else that you'd love to leave people with? Food for thought, exciting things, get out there, get moving?
Yeah. School Unity Project, it's the best thing that I do. And it's always followed up. It's the follow-up to me having an assembly at your school, and it's all about all the stuff that we've been talking about: dropping your ego, building meaningful relationships. And so if there's any principals, superintendents, administrators out there who are really interested in making their school better, School Unity Project it's the best way to get that done. So you can find that on my website, billcordes.com. There's all kinds of information on it.
Perfect. I'll put that at the very top of the show notes in case anybody's interested in getting that. And yeah, Bill, thanks again. I appreciate everything.
Great job, Cody. Talk to you soon.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
And that is Bill Cordes. What a guy. Isn't he great? I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I know I did. And I hope you can get as much out of it as I did, whether it's starting journaling or experimenting with a mind map. I know Bill has a lot more to offer, so I really suggest following him on Twitter at Bill Portis or getting in touch with him for his school Unity project and all the other great things that he's doing for the youth and adults alike. We got some exciting episodes coming up, so stay tuned. But thank you so much for taking your time today and giving us a listen. Tim on your headphones next time. Peace.